says we're live on my screen, so I think.
Right, excellent. And we'll start letting people in. Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. August, I'm going to go ahead and make you a co-host.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
What a beautiful day. I didn't expect it to be so nice today. I thought the colder, wetter weather was going to hit us.
Yeah, we've had some lovely last couple days for sure. So if we can take the opportunity to get outdoors is a wonderful thing. I know we're sometimes chained to our desks and computers, so yeah, get it outdoors. Enjoy it because it doesn't last. I won't say the W word or the S word, but it's coming.
No. We'll give a few more minutes for people to join. I do want everyone to know that we are recording, so just be fully aware.
Well, yes, thank you, everybody, for starting to put your names in the chat. That's very helpful. Nathaniel will appreciate that greatly.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, please put your name in the chat while we're waiting for people to join us. This meeting is being recorded and a link will be uploaded after the meeting. Right.
I appreciate everybody joining us this morning. We have a big agenda for today. All good stuff. I appreciate everybody taking the time to join us this morning. Wait just a few more minutes, I think, Laura, just in case.
Okay.
And then we'll get started.
Yes. Thank you to everybody for putting their name in the chat. This meeting is being recorded and we will upload the link later. Feel free to put any questions or comments in the chat. And I will be dropping some links from some of the relevant items that we're talking about into that as well. Okay.
All right, well, let's go ahead and we'll call the meeting to order. And again, we have a wonderful agenda planned this morning for you. I want to thank everyone for taking your time to be with us as we celebrate the month of October. I love it. It comes around something that started with Chicago Wilderness here as we get outdoors and enjoy the crispness and the beautiful colors of the season and all the great work that we've been going on. I just want to backtrack for a little bit as we get started this morning of where we've been and then where we continue to go as an alliance. And it's been a wonderful year. We've been working on our green vision, which you're going to hear about today. That's been in the works for greater than 18 months with our 7 goal groups that have been working to advance our collective goals in the region. We've been working with the Institute of Conservation Leadership on what it means to be a network and how we lead with shared leadership and giving us new tools to use, such as Jamboards and Mentimeters and more engagement in these sessions versus just a group of individuals. As you know, the Alliance, we have a team, a staff member of 1, Laura Riley, who is amazing. And we are so thankful for her work to connect us and keep us together. And of course, the work by the steering committee that meets regularly and our goal leads and team leads, but it is together that advances our work. And so each and every one of you are partners that come together to do the work that we can't do individually. And so that shared passion, and we've learned how to leverage that, and we're making great traction and momentum as we're going forward, which you're going to see through the program that we have for you today. We've also embarked with our working group on our JEDI, our Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, and have completed our Culture and Inclusion Survey. And we've had 1 training session working with Cream City Conservation, August Ball, who is with us today as well, who will share the results and a grant that we had received from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, Urban and Community Forest to help us advance that important work that we're going on. So a lot of activity, more to come, and what you're going to hear about today. So the first thing to get us started, I'd like to approve the agenda for today's meeting. And if I could get a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion, Jim Anderson.
Jim, thank you so much. Do I have a second?
Second, Ralph Schultz.
Ralph, thank you so much. Any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor, motion by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Those opposed, nay. Okay, the agenda for today is approved. Laura, Jim is not with us. Is that what you stated, Jim Jerizal?
He is not.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and take it onto the consent agenda. So on the consent agenda for you this morning, there are a few items of a matter of business, and then we can pull anyone for further discussion if there needs to be. We've got the Executive Council meetings of July 21st of this year, acceptance of the 3rd quarter Treasurer's Report. You've got the 2022 annual budget, and you had received a draft budget for review in July, and there's been some changes made to that budget with some additional investments that have come through the working groups, the steering committee, and the goal groups. And then we've got new members, and that ballot has gone out to bring that. Laura, I believe you have a few more slides just in high level to go over who are new members so we can welcome them.
Yes. Well, we want to welcome Brown Faces, Green Spaces, Give Up, Clean Back, the Fox River Ecosystem Partnership, FREP, and Scarce. Thank you very much for joining us if you're here with us today.
So are there any items that anyone would like to be placed, pulled off the consent agenda for further discussion? Any hands up or anything?
No.
Okay, hearing none, if I can have a motion to approve the consent agenda with those items.
So moved, Jerry Edelman.
Jerry, thank you so much. And do I have a second?
Second, Mike Lester.
Mike, thank you. Any discussion on the consent agenda items? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, motion by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. All right, the consent agenda is considered approved. Thank you so much. All right, terrific. We'll move now into our Cultural and Inclusion Survey results. And we have with us this morning, we are very appreciative of all the time and effort of all of our partners that participated, that leveraged this opportunity. And I like to talk about the why this is so important, and August can emphasize with the work. But I know many of us across the region are doing our own assessments and trainings with our teams of the important work on justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And the opportunity for the Alliance to bring this in, to add this value to your partnership membership, to be able to not only get the survey results, but so that we can speak with the same language, and then we can begin to weave this in as diversity and inclusion. It's not who you become, but it's who we are as an organization. And by having that shared language and shared focus, this will be great, and it will help us as we advance our Green Vision goals. So I'm going to turn it over to August Ball. Many of you, I don't know if you've joined us in July, have met with her, worked with her. She's a dynamic individual, and we appreciate her helping us and leading the way as we work through this with our Alliance group. Thank you.
August, do you want me to stop sharing and turn that over to you?
Yes, please, because I have some different slides, actually. I'd like to share. One moment. Okay. All right, friends. So I'm going to start off with some demographics for those who completed the assessment. We had 517 total participants across the membership who submitted their responses to the survey. These are the rough breakdowns of your age, disability, and caregiver status of your members. With regards to job level, job status, and education, again, majority of the responders were full-time. What I thought was interesting is that the majority of your membership had an advanced degree, or at minimum a 4-year degree. A very small percentage of the members who responded identified as having a 2-year degree or less. With regards to department, we had the highest representation from the natural resources areas, as well as education. With regards to tenure, nearly 50% of the responders had been with their organization for 8 years or more. And in terms of family status breakdown, the majority of your members who responded to the survey identified as being partnered parents, whereas the other half reported having no children. With regards to gender identity, the majority of the responders identified as women. Secondarily, they identified as men. In terms of sexual orientation, over 70% of your responders identified as heterosexual, and 14% identified as LGBTQ+. With regards to transgender identity, a small margin, around 3%, identified as yes. With regards to racial identity, the majority of the responders identified as white, 83, nearly 84%. The second largest minority group was Latine individuals, as well as Black or African American individuals. About 10 or 11% of your responders identified as English not being their first language. And the majority of your responders also identified as being US citizens. Here are your demographics in regards to relocation status, religion or spiritual affiliation, and political affiliation. Over half of your participants identified as being liberal, and roughly 20% identified as being moderate, and just under 5% identified as being conservative. With regard to religious affiliation, the highest majority was the Christian faith, seconded by secular or non-religious, or no affiliation. With regards to how CWA's membership racial identity stacks up against the United States labor force, we have some misalignment in terms of representation. The national average right now is 64% white. The CWA's membership that responded to the survey identified as 83.56% white. And with regards to the Latina community, just under 6% identified as such, whereas the national average is 16%. And then for folks who identified as Black or African American, just under 5% for CWA, 12% for the national average. The Asian community in the United States, however, is at 5%, whereas for CWA, it's under 2%. So some opportunity there to align ourselves, keeping in mind, of course, that CWA has thousands of members. So this is a small majority of representation here. So ideally in future assessments, we'd love to get a larger sample size. This is still statistically relevant, but it doesn't show the full picture of CWA's membership. So with regards to where the organization is, with insight provided from overall responses, the questionnaire was divided into two components, asking participants to respond with regards to their, and I'm sorry, the neutral component is not here. I'll have to take a look at that. But the responses for individuals about their own organization are up above here, up until the diversity bar. We are looking for responses that are at least 74% to be considered thriving. Anything under 35% would be considered detrimental and an area that we want to focus in on. But we also take note of the neutrality as well. So this is where individuals simply responded with a neutral response rather than a positive or negative response, which you can see here is the case for CWA. With regards to the comments in this assessment, there were many comments that noted a lack of knowledge about what CWA does and their purpose. And so many responders did not feel qualified to answer some of the questions specifically regarding CWA. So there's some opportunity for us there to expand awareness of what CWA contributes and what CWA does and what their functions are. So these are the two areas where there was overall thriving, compensation and contribution to broader purpose. With regards to key areas of opportunity, we've identified a sense of voice, decision-making, opportunities and resources, and diversity as areas of opportunity. With regards to our heat maps, the youngest and most mature staff scored the highest, 55 to 65-year-olds and 65 plus, and then your 18 to 24-year-olds. Laura, I do hear a little bit of background noise. I'm wondering if we could mute everyone. Thank you. Oh, still hear some background noise. Okay, that's better. With regards to disability, responders with a disability scored lower in overall satisfaction. 17% identified as having a disability. The national average is roughly 23%. Caregivers also reported lower overall levels of satisfaction in their experience with their organizations. With regards to job level, board members, executives, directors, and volunteers all identified as being the most satisfied. However, directors still scored mostly below 74%. With regards to job status, again, volunteers and part-time staff scored the highest overall with the exception of fairness. And with regards to gender identity, male responders scored higher than any other gender demographic in terms of overall satisfaction. With regards to immigration status, US citizens scored higher, but only by a marginal amount. With regards to department, administration, operations, fundraising are all departments that scored highest overall. However, public safety, facilities, research, and planning scored the lowest in satisfaction for compensation. With regards to race and ethnicity, white and African-American staff reported higher overall levels of satisfaction. As you can note here, in particular areas where the minimum sample size was not met, we are not able to see those specific scores, but we are able to see that there is representation from those identities. With regards to religious affiliation, responders who identified as Muslim reported the lowest levels of satisfaction. With regards to relocation status, members who had relocated for their role reported lower levels of overall satisfaction. And with regards to sexual orientation, responders who identified as straight and gay specifically reported higher levels of overall satisfaction. With regards to transgender identity, members who identified as transgender reported lower overall levels of satisfaction. Under the heat map of tenure, newest and most tenured staff, so again, much like age on either ends of the spectrum, reported highest levels of overall satisfaction. In regards to education, members with an advanced degree reported higher levels of overall satisfaction, with the exception of two-year degree holders who reported higher levels of satisfaction in the areas of diversity, benefits, and overall experience with CWA. For family status, members who are not parents or did not report being a parent reported lower levels of overall satisfaction in their experience. In terms of geographic location, Michigan and Indiana reported the highest levels of overall satisfaction. Non-native English speakers reported lower levels of overall satisfaction, with the exception of the areas of engagement, diversity, and overall experience with CWA. With regards to political affiliation, those who identified as politically moderate noted a slightly higher overall level of satisfaction, with the exception of their experience with CWA, in which liberal members reported higher levels of satisfaction with their experience. These are overall common themes. Again, most of the comments were neutral. Collaboration and career were noted as fairly neutral. There were comments that alluded to appreciating the existence of CWA in the beginnings of their careers, but not so much noting that as a value add currently. But for the majority that did mention positive experiences with CWA, noted the opportunities for learning and development, as well as leadership. Salary commentary, however, was fairly low, or more so in the negative realm, which is also important to note that salary or compensation, rather, was of the items that were scored the highest overall in terms of responses. So the comments simply give us a bit more color to the assessment. So with regards to focus areas and some suggested action steps, with regards to the open-ended questions, such as what can your organization do to be more attractive and inclusive to a diverse pool of partners? And this was inclusive of staff, volunteers, collaborators, community members. The responses were to increase the partnerships and outreach to various communities. There was significant mention of staff wanting to do either more outreach or a different type of outreach, but not having the support from their leadership to do so. There was also significant noting of the lack of people of color, people of the global majority in higher level positions in institutions that were members of CWA. With regards to the question of what can CWA do to be more attractive and inclusive to a diverse pool of partners, the responses were to increase awareness of what CWA does, to build community through cultural activities, to also change ways and reinvent the current traditional models of how environmental work, conservation work is done, and to expand the hiring to ensure that the workforce is representative and the membership is representative of the US labor force. And so with that, friends, I will take some questions now.
Thank you, August.
Yeah.
So a lot to take in, I know, and appreciate that. Perspectives or any questions that anyone has, just raise your hand or unmic yourself and ask away. John, please.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, August. I had a question on the compensation questions. It's been long enough since I took this that I don't quite remember. That was in terms of people's compensation if they're employed by a member agency. Is that right? I was just confused by that part.
Yes, that was, I'm going to pull up the exact questions now, but that was regards to being employed through an organization that was typically a member of CWA.
So those questions are more reflective of one's employer, but most of the other questions are more reflective of one's experience within CWA.
Right. So the top half of the questionnaire was regarding the individual's organization that they work for. The bottom half was in regards to their experience with CWA.
Thank you for that reminder.
Yeah. I see a hand up from Ted Hafner.
Yeah, thank you, August. This was really impressive. I guess my question is, so now that we have this insight backed up by the data, where do we go from here? Specifically, I asked because I'm newly minted head of the climate committee, and this data would be great for us to get and work on and massage. Is that in the works? Is it going to stay at the executive level for a while until they figure out strategy? Do we know? I guess what are the next steps for this?
Absolutely. So first, each organization that has a viable sample size that participated in the assessment will receive their own raw data. I'm the only one that has access to that right now. CWA does not have that information broken out. So once I get the list of emails for the respective either executive directors or correct leadership individual, I'll be sending their raw data to them. In terms of what CWA is doing as a whole, we will move into phase 2, which is our education series. So the racial equity and environmentalism workshop was the first in that. We will have another one of those sessions next week, a repeat of racial equity and environmentalism due to the conflict of a religious holiday for the first session. Each of these sessions are going to be recorded and available for, I believe, at least a month for anyone who can't make the sessions live, although I do encourage everyone to try to attend live. So phase 2 is all about establishing shared language and understanding about not only how we got to where we are in terms of the demographics of our organizations and our industry, but what it's going to take to help foster an inclusive and equitable and just industry. And then we will move into phase 3 with CWA identifying a roadmap, and that's going to be created by the work group with CWA. So we will take in the benchmarking that was done through this assessment, the newfound and established shared language, putting that into action with our roadmap for final phase 3. Yeah.
August, one of the things that we talked about, and this is great, and I appreciate all the questions coming forward. One of the things when you presented this to the working group and the steering committee in advance of this meeting was this time commitment of obviously the natural tendency, I think, of us to move to when do we get to how we're going to move this into action. And if you could talk a little bit, because I thought it was very insightful of how you believe incorporating Jedi work into an organization.
Yeah. So we cannot solve a problem we don't fully understand. And it's not lost on me that CWA and its members, and quite frankly, the average individual who's drawn to the type of work that you all do are very much so action oriented. And unfortunately, however, that creates a desire to rush in to solve any gaps. Unfortunately, we end up inadvertently doing some harm often when we approach the work that way, because we actually don't have all of the tools necessary to solve for it. Naturally, we're all going to be at different places in this work. And many of us are using terms collectively in our organizations, within the industry. Yet we have never actually established shared definition of those terms. And so we're not going to be in a spot to solve for racial inequity if we actually don't have a standard common understanding of what racial equity, for example, is, how it came to be, and what some of the common practices are that for many institutions are simply perceived as concepts of professionalism and just how the culture of work is, that are actually contributing to the hindrance of their ability to attract and retain a workforce that is, and a volunteer base even, that is representative of the US population. So ensuring that we start at least from a place of shared language, shared understanding of how we got here, what's keeping us here despite our better intentions, is going to help us and be more innovative, smarter, and more strategic in actually disrupting some of the common patterns that are producing the outcomes we're seeing. This doesn't mean, however, that everyone is going to join us on this journey. In fact, it's not uncommon for me to experience staff members of a particular client group to say, this is all good and grand, and I get the moral implications of being equitable and inclusive, but I signed up to do conservation work. I'm not a social justice warrior. And to that, my response is, well, you're also probably not an EMT organization, but I'm willing to bet that your field staff are required to complete first aid and CPR training, are they not? And I also get the comment, my question also is that you're also probably not a sexual assault prevention agency. But I understand that federally, we are all required to ensure our staff complete anti-sexual harassment training. Racial equity education is no different. It is a component to our jobs that help us be more effective, reducing harm for both individuals and our organizations that we work for, that help us be better at working in an intersectional, multicultural environment. This is education that we simply have not received in many of our formal education tracks. And so it is up to our organizations and our institutions to provide that training because it is mission critical to us accomplishing our overall goals. And even for organizations that might think, well, we are located in a fairly homogeneous environment or neighborhood or region, with the inevitable realities of climate change, we are seeing climate migration occur. In 20 years, our demographics are going to look very differently. We've seen that occur in the last census study. So this means that just because a region, a state, an area is currently fairly racially homogenous does not mean that it will be the case forever. And it is my hope that the environmental industry does not become Blockbuster. If any of you know the plight that Blockbuster met, right, where they became obsolete because they failed to adapt to changing times. So that is my methodology and my thought work around this. We have to study a problem before we can solve it. And this has nothing to do with individual intelligence or empathy or character. This is simply a manifestation of the realities of how our society has been designed. And so it's nothing to feel guilty about, regardless of where you are personally on your journey. But I will say that, so while we offer ourselves grace throughout this process, I encourage and behoove all of you to also maintain accountability for your own growth and advancement and action in this space.
Thank you, August. Any other questions for August? The process. We will be placing this information, the total data and the slides that were shared with us today on the outward facing side of the Alliance with this information so that it can be viewed. We're also promoting the sign up for the workshops, which was introduced. The next one, a repeat of the first session, Racial Equity, October 26th. And we're also going to be providing an opportunity for a certificate of completion as a way for those that participate either, which we hope is part of when the sessions are held, or they view them on their own for the 30 days. If they complete all of that, an honor system, then there will be a certificate of completion that they can show back to your organization of that you've participated in these important training sessions to educate us all on the common language. And these are being offered at no additional cost. The other thing that when we send out the individual data for those that participated, if there's more work that you're looking and you want to go deeper into your information, then of course you can work independently with August on its own type of one-on-one basis with additional fees for service if there's something that you need more than what's provided for that data. Any other questions on this? Again, thank you, August. Thank you to all of the members that work to get their individuals and their organizations to participate. And we will let the process continue into phase 2 and look forward to continued work.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay, we're now going to turn it over to Jim Anderson and Mark Johnson to give us an ICL update on our Green Vision collective goals, the exciting work, and of course, this hub, which is very exciting if you haven't explored this. So take it away, guys.
Hey, thanks and good morning, everyone. I'm gonna slide my view thing over so I'm looking straight at you. Second here. There we go. Just to refresh everybody, the steering committee of Chicago Wilderness a while back in January, actually probably last year, thought that as we started working through the goals and getting the goal teams set up, we felt there was a need to really think about how those goal team leaders and the sub leaders and everything that was beginning to develop would communicate with each other, and what was the best way to run meetings, and how could we pull this all together hopefully in January of 2022 to present to the Executive Council and really begin to say, this is where Chicago Wilderness is headed, this is what we're going to focus on, and here's the different goals that we have. I believe we have 7 different goals, and I actually say we have 8 with the hub, because the hub is a really great tool that collects all the information from these 7 other goals. And so when we started talking about how we would bring in assistance, many of us, many of you may have participated with the Diane Russell and Peter Lane with the Institute for Conservation Leadership. And we just felt that they were really the best group of people to help us think through this whole process. They come at things and they, just as August has talked about, you have to study it to understand it. And so we felt that they have, we're involved in a lot of things with vital lands, with the Forest Preserve of Lake County, our green infrastructure plan. And we just felt they were a good organization. And so we did bring them on. They've been working with us all year long. They've had several things that they would like to focus on. And, they wanted to be able to help guide our process. And so they've been doing that. They've talked several times about network development, and that's how we function as an alliance. Organizational functioning is quite different than working within a network of people who bring a lot of different things to the table. And so they also wanted to provide a little support for the work groups. And so Diane and Peter have spent time with most of the work groups, trying to help them walk through where they're at. And then we wanted to bring together this final document that we're coming to being developing for the January Executive Council meeting. And we're kind of getting very close to that. It is October. So we have November and December to finish this task. And so we are leading down to the end of ICL's work with us, but they do have a couple of things that they would are offering, and the steering committee has agreed to carry out. And so one of the things that they're going to do is be presenting a 90-minute leading in a network skill building session open to anybody in CWA. And so we really want to, the last steering committee, which was just this week, we had a really good discussion. Amy Rosenthal from the Field Museum kind of focused on this about fostering engagement with new members. How do we think about including them as they come in the door, but also getting them in the door? We also talked to them with this process of leading in a network about how do we facilitate effective participatory meetings. I think many of you have gone through this process of being on Zoom meetings. Some of them are very hectic and everybody's talking and we're just not getting anywhere. We don't get anything done. They've been very helpful in sharing some tools to walk through this process of how you make those Zoom meetings very, very effective. And I got to say that they've helped Patty Vitt and myself work on the Healthy Landscapes one. And I know others folks have taken advantage, and it really does help when you have an organized meeting and using some tools that just, I would say in a natural resource team meeting, I would probably get a lot of very quiet meetings and where I was just presenting things. And the last meetings have been very interactive. Everybody has an opportunity to put down their thoughts without any judgment. From a Zoom, you use a Jamboard or Mentimeter, and it's all anonymous, and it's really worked out well and created some great information for us to synthesize. And then they also want to talk to us about how do we do decision making? How do we get through those tough decisions? Do we work on this in year 1 or 2? Is it this a year 5 thing? And so that leading and network thing, we will be announcing when that will be occurring and sharing that with everybody. And then they also talked about they had a little bit more time that they thought they could spare. And so again, we felt the best use of their time was 4 different meetings where we're going to start thinking about bringing the planning groups together and start talking about how to talk across those planning groups. How do we integrate? Monday, we had the natural resource and science team meeting, and a lot of things that were discussed there, we can see stretches into the climate goal. Stretches into the education goal. has a great need for data management. So we want to make sure that each goal team and the hub is thinking about how do we communicate and steer everything in one direction so that we're kind of all following the same game plan. So they're going to have 4 different meetings and they're going to work with us. And they kind of said, we want to make sure the right people are on the bus and in the right seat and that we have goal alignment. You know, one of the very first things that ICL talked about is all of us as members of Chicago Wilderness really need to get behind the same alignment for our goals. We all have to be that in agreement with where we're going and why we're getting there. And now these things also will think about other things that are running in concurrence, such as the August, work. We want to incorporate that into everything we're doing. And then also more recently, the president's 30 by 30 plan has been something that we have been trying to roll into Chicago Wilderness and see how it fits. And I think Stacy will be giving a presentation on that later today. So then the final 2 things that they will be doing is in January, they will be facilitating this final report, which will be about a 90-minute kind of interactive session. And then finally, they'll come back to working with the steering committee as a follow-up to assess our progress and really try to get the steering committee further guidance on where we want to go. So I think that's about all I have. I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything to the ICL. I know we do want to talk about the hub site. So I am very happy to turn it over to Mark, unless anybody's got questions. See, now if we had an interactive tool, you would all participate because I'm sure someone out there has a question. So anyway.
Thank you, Jim. You said Mark was going to oversee that hub.
Right.
Great. I see there's a question in the chat just about sharing 30 by 30 talk information today, if that's possible.
Yes, I will have that compiled with the meeting minutes and notes from today. Thank you very much. And I've already received that information from Stacy, who will be presenting that shortly.
Great. Yeah, if we're ready to go ahead, can I share my screen? Does that work? Yeah, it looks like I can do that now.
Yes, that works.
All right, great. So yeah, the CW Hub is now kind of in what we're calling a soft live. So what that means is it is fully accessible by everyone. If you follow the link, and I see Laura just put that into the chat. So while it's beginning to look more like a finished product, we've now started to work with a design team to kind of do a little bit of a facelift and to add some colors. But it's definitely not a finished product at this point. It's definitely still a work in development. And part of the reason for kind of going soft live right now is so that we can begin to get feedback from each of the different goal groups and folks that are particularly interested in getting in early and checking it out. And we do encourage you to do that. So some of the things that we've done, like I said, we've worked with a team to do some of the design updates, but we wanted to make it mobile friendly. So we still have kind of the card interface that you've probably seen before, but we've now introduced these colors that carry through to each of the different pages, landing pages for the different goal groups. We've also done some work to just remove the use of all the goal numbers. So up at the top of the screen, there's navigation there that matches what you see on the cards. But again, we've kind of removed the use of those goal numbers. Once you go into the pages, we do still reference it in there just for folks that want to remember what those numbers are. There's also and I'll come back and we'll sort of dig into what one of these pages looks like. But this section, so if you go to the site now, you're not going to see this section that's in the middle here. this is what we call, we're building out a repository in the process of building the site. So certainly we want to spend a lot of the time with the site working on tracking goals, but we also want to build up a GIS and data repository. So when we're ready, we're going to make it so that folks can actually create an account on this site, and then you'll be able to see this section in the middle here. And folks who want to get in early, you can write to me, Mark at mjohnston@fieldmuseum.org. We can probably drop that in the chat too. But if you want to get involved early, we can set up an account for you, and then you can begin to actually upload data to the repository. So that's basically, you click on this form button here. I'll just show you briefly, and you fill out a survey, and that survey will capture information, your contact information, and information about the data set that you're uploading. If you've seen this in the past, we couldn't take files bigger than 10 megabytes. Now we can. So that's great news, but it's done through a Google folder. So you have to upload to a Google folder. That's a limitation of Esri. Anyway, for folks who want to get involved in adding data to the site, again, just contact me and we can get you engaged. Let's see. So other stuff, I'm just going to jump into one quick example. Let's see, I think I'll do this, adding conservation lands. So we have things like metrics that we're going to want to track over time. Right now, you may have seen this already, still loading here, but the kind of metrics we'll want to know is like, how much land are we acquiring over time? And so we've got like a graphic for that. We're going to have this become, so look for this to become more interactive with a chart that really is showing that progression over time. And we'll have charts like that for all the different goals as we begin to work with those groups to find out what they want to track. Something else we have now are these buttons across the top of the screen, so you can look at a full-size map instead of just the small sort of embedded one. So we'll let that draw there. I'm going to go back. We also have a help document to kind of give you an idea of what all the different tools are. So now it's sort of, there's a PDF here that shows you what these different tools are, how they can be used, just as a way to help guide you through this map interface. Let's see, so other buttons here, we've got then the data repository. So before we had this on the main page, we're trying to reduce the number of choices that a user needs to make when they're first approached to the site. And then there's, like on this one, there's a prototype map. We're looking at ways to have additional interactive maps so that we can have some more kind of thematic maps and not just kind of the whole kitchen sink dropped in. So let me dig into this map. I'm going to look at it on the bigger screen here. So there's buttons across the top. First, across the very top right, there's over here is going to be your legend. And you can do things like turn layers on and off using the button next to that. And then I'm going to come back, and then there's a share button if you want to share with other people. Then over on the left here, we've got things like you can change the base map. So if you want just a simple background, you can do that. There's a place where you can look at bookmarks, as they're called. So you can zoom to different extents on the map. So let's say City of Chicago, and it zooms to there, or Hackamattack, for example. Waterfall Glen. So there's different opportunities here to just sort of zoom around. We could obviously add more of those links. If you add links yourself, you're only going to see that change on your screen, so it doesn't save for everyone else. Okay, I'm going to skip over this next tool and show one to the right of it. This is where you add additional data layers. So again, we're going to want to be working with each of the goal groups to say, all right, what layers should we definitely have on these maps when the user first comes to it? And then what additional layers? This is using that repository where people can upload data. This is a filtered list that's specific to this goal. So on this list, there's layers that have been uploaded. And you can just I'm going to move this over to the side. You can just click and say add and add that layer, and it'll put it on the map for you. You can also remove it from that same button. I'm going to add habitat fragments, and this is getting really busy, so I'll show you how we can clean that up in a minute. And then this cost surface is kind of fun to play with too. And all right, so now I'm going to come over to the right side of the screen, and now I can turn some of these layers off that I've turned on. So let's see, let's turn off some of these protected lands and things. Or actually, I want to keep protected lands, and habitat cost and habitat fragments is kind of cool. Okay, so we still got a really busy map. So what we can do using this tool that I skipped over, it's called a swipe tool. You can click on that and then choose layers that you want to sort of peel back. So I'm going to peel back this layer that has all the red and color in it. And what this map in the background that I'm peeling back is showing us is where are those areas that you can, where can wildlife more easily traverse across this landscape? So areas in red are harder to traverse, and areas in green are easier to traverse. And then you can peel that back and say, well, which of those lands are actually protected across our landscape? So maybe we zoom in to like this area over here. Sorry, it takes a minute to redraw. Maybe I zoomed in too close. There we go. And so we're kind of in the Juliet region here. And so you can see like there's a chunk here of land where it's a great wildlife corridor, but this area isn't protected according to our protected lands map. So that might be like a place where, hey, maybe we should focus in that area to see if that's an area that can be acquired. And there's probably folks on this call that know a lot about this area. I'm just using it as an example. Might not be a great one, but again, down in here. So these are some of the ways that you can kind of interact with the map and do kind of your own GIS, and then you could share it out with other people. In addition to this, let me go back to the to the main page. We've also got down below this probably is not the best example, but we've got these map galleries we started to set up. So we've got this for most of the different goal groups. And so this will be another place where we can put sort of thematic maps that are already maps that have a theme to them. You can see obviously this map up above here, it's got lots of layers, and it's hard to say like what's going on here. You're kind of doing the GIS yourself. We can have static maps down here that can be like maps that you want to take to a meeting or that you want to send to a funder, maps that are kind of making a point, right? So let's see, accessing nature. I think we've got a bunch of maps down at the bottom here that do that. And we started to add these to all the different interactive maps. So I'm going to pause there and see if we've got questions. Oh, and one other thing I just want to say, next steps, we're talking about sending out a survey to the different goal teams. So we'll probably be looking to do that in the next few weeks to start to get your feedback. Before we do that, we're going to try to do kind of another push to get more data up there based on feedback we've received from groups, from some of the meetings we've had. And then adding more of those additional sort of interactive maps. We're also really pushing that we want folks to start giving us more photographs. All the photos we have are mostly coming from Field Museum that tend to be focused on City of Chicago and some of our work. We'd love to get photos from other folks. So I think we'll try to get some of those through the survey, but also if you just want to reach out, we'd be happy to start showing some of those. And yeah, go ahead, Jim or whoever.
Oh, no, I want to support what you just said. Any photographs that could be shared with both Chicago Wilderness and the Hub, we would be really interested in those, and that will be sent out in the survey. Mark, do you want me to drop the data spreadsheet link in? I have that if you feel that's relevant. Cherie had a question about placeholders for the Hub for data in their own archives. I can share that link if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be fine. Yeah, it's publicly accessible, and yeah, that's great. Definitely, it's a little messy, but yeah, I'm happy to get feedback through that as well, so we can continue to build our list of data layers that we want to add.
Mark, thank you. This is so exciting and so much work has been done, and to see this start to come together visually and as the goals work towards all of these areas. Thank you for your leadership and your working team on this, as well as everybody else. This is really phenomenal.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for Mark or Jim on our green vision? Okay, thank you. Next, we're going to move on. Cook County Forest Preserve District has a referendum that's coming on the ballot. And we've got with us Benjamin Cox, Friends of the Forest Preserve, as well as Alicia Sanchez from the Nature Conservancy. And I'll turn it over to you to talk about this proposition.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I am going to share here. Oh, wait, wrong button. Present. There we go. Good morning. I'm Benjamin Cox. I'm Executive Director of Friends of the Forest Preserves. I think Alicia is a little under the weather and didn't join today unless she snuck in. So I'll rely on some of my other coalition members or even Laura for a little help here. So I'll talk today about this referendum that we are putting forth here in Cook County for supporting the forest preserves. Everyone's very familiar with these in the region. There's been many in the collar counties that have had great success with just incredible amounts of money raised, and for some reason the forest preserves of Cook County have not ever run a referendum, and we're doing it now. Why now? Things are better at the forest preserves. Thanks to Arnold Randall and friends, they've really improved the forest preserves. Tony Preckwinkle has really bought into the idea that the forest preserves are essential and that they should be improved. And over the last 10 years, we've seen great strides in improving the preserves. Last year during the pandemic, the forest preserves of Cook County stayed open while many other things were closed, and we saw attendance at the preserves go from approximately 60 million visits for the year to over 100 million visits in a year. Obviously these 70,000 acres play an important role for protecting water and air, and also providing habitat for wildlife. And of course, they're a place for all of us to find respite from the city and to really enjoy the forest preserves and get out and learn from them and recreate in them. And there's lots of jobs, for young people and adults and conservation corps programs and even on staff at the preserves. But at the end of the day, the resources for the forest preserves in Cook County are pretty insufficient. They have not kept up like other counties have in funding, and they're funded at a much lower level than other preserves, and really they need some help. So, this is the first and largest oldest forest preserve district in the country. Sort of cheating because forest preserves are, that specific county-based forest preserve or conservation district is really unique to Illinois. Started in Cook County. It's 2 years older than the National Park Service. It's twice as large as any of the others in the state. If you put it on a list of national parks, it would rank in the 40s. So it's larger than about 20 other national parks. We argue that and we're actually doing the mapping work on this, but this might be the most conservation land in close proximity to the largest population of people in the country. And certainly if we expanded that out, which we can try and do that also, but to the Chicago wilderness region, I think that would really bear out. There are obviously much larger pieces of conservation land in the country, but they're not nearly as close or let alone integrated in and amongst people and where they live like this. And as many of you know, forest preserve districts are a special unit of government in Illinois. It's a standalone government. It's not part of the county. And as a special unit, it's not allowed to raise its own taxes. It cannot be a home rule government. And so they can either go downstate and ask the state legislators to raise their taxes, which, is very unlikely, or they can go to referendum. And that's what we're doing. some really great news is last year of the 50 conservation funding initiatives on the ballot in November of 2020, 49 passed. And our lead partners, the Trust for Public Land and the Nature Conservancy, helped lead 26 of those, and 26 of those passed. And even one of them passed on Election Day here in Illinois, in Champaign County, at over 56% of the vote. So we know that conservation is something that speaks to both sides of the aisle, that in districts that went for Trump, they passed at almost the same level as districts that went for Biden. This is not a partisan issue, which is wonderful. So what would the funding be used for? Land acquisition, restoration, jobs programs, recreation, essentially engagement, recreation, education, connection for people to nature, and support for the Brookfield Zoo and the Chicago Botanic Garden, as those are both part of the forest preserves of Cook County. And finally, all the other things, increased funding to care for the public spaces, to provide for additional security. There's a pension fix in the mix here, and things like capital improvement, things that there's a long list of needs for the forest preserves. So as partners, the lead organizations like Open Lands and Friends of the Forest Preserves and Trust for Public Land and Nature Conservancy, Illinois Environmental Council, and the Brookfield Zoo, Chicago Botanic Garden, and others, we can look at the forest preserve and say that it is much better than it was 10 years ago when the superintendent, Arnold Randall, and Tony Preckwinkle started. It wasn't that nothing was happening before that. There had been some changes and some things moving, but we've seen great strides over the last 10 years. And we're comfortable in supporting this and really being that third-party voice that will drive this referendum. The coalition is coming together to do that. We have over 63 members already and growing. It grows every week. And this referendum will be on the ballot in November of 2022. The other thing about the coalition is it's really growing beyond the choir. We did attempt this effort back in 2019. We were asked by the governor to not do it on the 2020 ballots, even though it would have passed with easily, according to the polling, because he didn't want competition with his fair tax. But at that time, we had less time to build the coalition, less time to put together sort of the effort, and we were in the 20s on coalition members, and it was really the choir, and everybody could probably actually make the list if you thought about the groups in Cook County that care about nature. And now we're seeing, we're getting into recreation groups, we're getting into local community groups and theaters groups, and just a whole diversity of organizations that are, Teamsters Union, and it's, as I said, it's growing. We've just added one corporation in REI so far, and I'm sure we'll see that continue to grow also. So we expect to have a very large and wide-ranging coalition. Why is that important? Because really, we need to be able to serve as the third-party endorsers of this campaign. The forest preserves can't actually run this themselves. The Forest Preserve staff can tell you why it's important or why it's needed, but they can't actually advocate for it. And just like the founding of the Forest Preserves over 100 years ago, when civic leaders came together and put, really move forward that part of the Burnham Plan that said, free and clear lakefront in the city, parks and boulevards in the city, and then forest preserves outside of the city. Just like the civic leaders that pulled that together, civic leaders are coming together now to move this referendum forward. The ask is that Chicago Wilderness help us with getting the word out to add more coalition members. And we had a discussion, and I think Laura could help me explain this a little bit better, but we think that the ask here is not specifically for Chicago Wilderness to join as a member of the coalition, but to help promote this through your communications and through the network.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in and represent the government relations conversation that we had after the presentation to the steering committee, unless another member of the steering committee would like to do so. We were really proud of the work that the government relations community did to refine our policy action alert request system, so that member organizations can submit requests to implement this, and that we would be able to distribute it across the Chicago Wilderness email system through an action alert request. And part of that would be directing them to your campaign information and asking those that are interested to sign on if they could do so. And help me out here, Elizabeth. The conversation with the steering committee is that we felt that we recognized that due to many of our partners, that we would not be able to make a formal sign on as Chicago Wilderness itself, but we're happy to support that with perhaps some additional recommended language that the steering committee felt comfortable with, which was that this initiative very much supported the green vision goals for Chicago Wilderness.
Laura, you are correct. Because the Alliance has a diverse membership of federal, state, local governmental entities, and there may be others, but we are prohibited by statute for advocating to vote yes on ballot measures such as that. So by the Alliance, individual organizations that can support individuals that can do when they're not on work time, of course, there's ways to lend a hand. So we provide that conduit.
So the recommendation from the steering committee was recommending perhaps that either the Friends of the Forest Preserve or the Nature Conservancy would submit an action request form, and there's information listed here, which actually I'm listing for all of our members to be aware of, that if they have an issue that they would also similarly like to raise with Chicago Wilderness and the government relations community, that this is the format that we use to do that. And at that point, then we can take action and help distribute appropriate information.
Benjamin, this is Jim Anderson. Do you have a place on your website where it talks about this effort?
So
I'm looking at your website, and so I'm just thinking an organization like Citizens for Conservation would really like to be on that group of supporters.
Yep.
So I'm just trying to figure out how I would do that for you.
So at this moment, any one of our sort of coalition member or our steering committee members and our coalition building members could share information with them directly. We've just the vote to put this on the ballot was in July. We've just started the 501c4 in the recent weeks. We're ready. We're just about maybe going to get our first contributions, and so then we will be hiring a digital marketing firm to put up a website. So we don't have a specific spot yet, but I can get that to you. I can get that form to you today, Jim. I also know that I think Justin Pepper was bringing it to them, maybe even last night. I think there was a meeting last night.
Yeah, there was a meeting Monday night and it didn't get brought up. So I certainly want, as vice president, I would like to be able to bring that forward and put our name on that list. So
yes. So in the short term, am I muted?
No.
Okay. In the short term, I shared a link to sign up for their newsletter, as well as to email Tanisha Harris from the Illinois Environmental Council directly.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Tanisha is the chair of our coalition building committee.
Okay, great. Thank you for your help.
Sure thing. The basic ask of a coalition member is to sign on, allow us to use your name as part of the list, and also to, when it comes time, to promote the referendum through your social media or your other communications, and your email listservs and things like that. But there's an extra level if folks are interested in getting more involved in the actual campaign. And
right.
We have really robust groups and meetings happening right now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Benjamin. Appreciate
Thank
the background and information. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to turn it over for our nominations and recruitment. And I believe, Daniel, you're going to take this.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth, and hi, everybody. As you may remember, Linda Lancaster and myself were tasked with recruiting new steering committee members. We will have 2 steering committee members that will be leaving the steering committee at the end of this year. That's myself and Dave Giordano from the Root Pike Watershed Partnership in Wisconsin. And as you might remember, last year, we also went through a nomination process and had a lot of good interest. We actually had more nominees than we could bring on to the steering committee. And so our first process this year was to reach back out to those folks who had applied last year to see if they were still interested. We had some great conversations with those people. We had good conversations with folks who were considering applying for the steering committee, including I was very heartened to see many individuals who were relatively new to Chicago Wilderness or were kind of earlier in their careers. So on the basis of a lot of those conversations, it seems like most of those folks after the conversation decided that more in-depth participation on committees and other CW initiatives was probably a better step before jumping right into the steering committee fray. And so at this stage right now, we're prepared to put forth one individual for consideration for the steering committee starting next year. And then we're still actually having some ongoing conversations with a couple of other people whose names will most likely be brought forth in the January meeting for onboarding onto the steering committee. And just so that everyone knows, I'm not 100% well versed in all of the bylaws, the many bylaws we have within CW. But if we, I mentioned we have 2 vacancies. If we bring on one person and we still have that one vacancy for a couple of months, that does not go against any of our bylaws. We have a range of steering committee size that we're required to have, and so bringing just one person on right now will still satisfy that requirement. And so at this stage right now, after consideration with the steering committee, we'd like to bring forth the nomination of Victoria Wittig to the table. She is with Save the Dunes. She's been there for several years and has led, as probably many on this call know, several very successful conservation action planning processes around the Calumet region, as well as outreach and advocacy work. And so that's who we're prepared. Like I mentioned before, at the January Executive Council meeting, we might bring forth another name for consideration to fill out that full roster. But for now, we're just going to go forward with Victoria. So happy to open this up to anyone for discussion for we ask for a motion.
Jim Anderson will make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Jim. Is there a second?
Second by Ralph Schultz.
Ralph, thank you so very much. And before we vote, we also, and Daniel, I just want to say thank you so much for the work that you and Linda did in pulling this together, as well as, I think you're absolutely right, as we've heard from August and as we build to be more representative of diverse inclusion, not only of individual backgrounds, but geographically and member type of organizations. It's an ongoing process. And so that will remain open. And then also you have some of the individuals re-up for their second term. So they're actually rolling over. So that's also noted here in the motion. Yeah. Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, motion by saying aye.
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 And those opposed, nay? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you so very much. And again, thank you, Daniel and Dave, who will be going off. And of course, we will celebrate you at our January meeting. And Daniel, you've been with us since we began with having the steering committee, and your leadership and your work has been invaluable. And I am so grateful for all your time and effort that you've put in to the Alliance and that leadership role. So thank you. Okay, so that's going to move us now, Ralph, into the Excellence in Ecological Restoration Program.
Good morning, everyone. The EERP program, as we refer to it, received a number of applications this year. Our site reviewers have completed their work and we're ready to make some recommendations. So we have 4 recommendations to make today. The first is Glacial Park in McHenry County Conservation District at a platinum level. The second, Cranberry Slough Forest Preserves of Cook County at a platinum level. The third, Pine Dunes East in Lake County at a platinum level. And lastly, Braidwood Dunes in Will County at a gold level.
So Ralph, we need per the process, the commission has been on site, has reviewed and scored. And so we need an action, a vote to approve the commission's recommendation on the awarding of these levels. Is that correct?
That's correct. Once a motion is made and executive council has made their decision, then we reach out to each one of those individual applicants and then advise them of the executive council's recommendations.
Terrific. Thank you so much. All right. Do we have a motion? Ralph, do you want to move since on the commission or?
Sure.
Step forward?
Sure. I would make a motion that we approve the recommendations of the Excellence in Ecological Restoration Commission accreditations for 2021.
Thank you so much. Is there a second?
Second, Mike.
Thank you so much, Mike. All right. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, motion by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Okay, the motion carries. Again, thank you to the commission for your work. Thank you for the organizations that went through the process to submit to this program. And we look forward to celebrating with everyone as well as the Force of Nature Awards later on in December here. So I'm going to turn it over to Cherie, Force of Nature. You just want to give an update about that if you're with us?
Yep. Good morning, everyone. So we had 26 nominations come in this year. And over the last couple of weeks, we had the review teams met and have made their decisions for the most part. We are not at this point going to reveal the award winners because people have not yet been notified. But we're hoping that everyone is able to join us on December 8th at Thatcher Woods, 3 p.m. for the Excellence in Ecological Restoration and Force of Nature Awards, plus a member appreciation event. So we are planning to have that in person and hopefully offer a video option as well for those who can't attend in person. And we look forward to seeing everyone there. Thanks.
Cherie, thank you and your team for all of your work. Very exciting to see a great number of nominees be sent forward. And it is an inspiring event to see what's been done, both the accreditation side as well as the Force of Nature's. So thank you.
Could I flash a slide briefly that lists the review teams?
Please.
Okay. It says that the host has disabled participant sharing.
Laura, can you share?
I was just trying to find her name. Thank you, Cherie. You're ready to go now.
Okay. There we go. Okay, so I won't try to put it in presentation mode. Can everyone see that? So again, we had a great cross-section of reviewers from different organizations of different sizes. I want to thank everyone who agreed to serve as a reviewer this year. In particular, I want to thank Leslie Dorworth, who served on 2 teams because we lost a reviewer on one team, and also Dave Schimberg, who stepped up at the last minute to replace someone who was not able to complete the review process. So thanks to everyone. Hopefully it was a fun and interesting process, and we look forward to presenting the awards in December. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Sheree. Okay, the next item we have is a presentation on America the Beautiful, 30 by 30. And Stacey Myers, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. And then Tanisha Harris with IEC is also with us this morning.
Wonderful.
So I'm going to put this into all right. Can everyone see the slides?
Yes.
Wonderful. All right, Tanisha, would you like to start?
Yes. Hello, Chicago Wilderness. It's nice to be back. I was an intern here in 2016, so nice to see some familiar faces. I am the Chicagoland Conservation Manager with the Illinois Environmental Council, and I'm joined with Stacy, who with Oaklands, whom I'm sure you guys are very familiar with. And we're here to talk about a partnership between the Illinois 30 by 30 Coalition and Chicago Wilderness on an ambitious an international campaign called 30 by 30, which we are going to talk about. Next slide. So right now we are in the largest existential crisis, which is climate change. Climate change coupled with biodiversity loss and pollution is really threatening our planet, our way of life, and things like our food web. If you look at this quote from the UN report, they're closely interconnected and put the well-being of current and future generations at unacceptable risk. So along with things like clean energy, which I'm sure you guys might be really familiar with after that historic passage of CEJA, we're also looking at nature-based climate solutions to mitigate these 3 problems that we're encountering right now, and really weaving them into the conversations about how do we mitigate climate change, how do we prevent extinction loss or protect biodiversity, and how we make sure that things like our food web are still functioning and sustainable so we can protect people and planet. Next slide. And with that comes the Restoring and Conserving America the Beautiful campaign. We will talk about the details of that as well, but we also have, it's also called 30 by 30, which is an international campaign, which is basically to protect 30% of land and water by 2030. Now, there are myriad of ways to do that, not just internationally, but also right here in Illinois and the Chicago ecoregion. Whether that's thinking about how do we use more sustainable practices on working lands or agriculture, how do we expand urban open space, how do we protect wildlife habitat and corridors, even to marine protected areas, which for the Chicago ecoregion would be how are we managing our lakes, our streams, flooding, stormwater management. All of that is called nature-based climate solutions, and it fits under 30 by 30. And 30 by 30 takes a very holistic and unique lens on how to mitigate climate change, but also while also unsiloing how conservation has traditionally been done. So let's get into Restoring and Conserving America the Beautiful, which is Biden's 30 by 30 initiative. So first, to start off, is how this work is governed. And these are the 8 principles that came out in the America the Beautiful report. And I want to say that the Illinois 30 by 30 Coalition has also adopted these principles. And these lay the framework of how to approach this work. Whether it be collaborative and inclusive approach to conservation, to making sure that we're using science as a guideline, to honoring tribal sovereignty and support tribally led conservation practices, everything that is carried out in the campaign and also the coalition work that Stacy and I are part of approaches this framework. And so this is really to think about, again, how do we unsilo this work? How do we do this in a non-traditional fashion to making sure that we are doing that type of stakeholder engagement that we're honoring and correcting historic injustices that have happened throughout conservation work, but also making sure that we're putting people and equity at the forefront of this work and that no one is left behind as we're implementing these strategies and these policy solutions. So these are the 8 principles that guide this work before we get into the type of policies or goals that are laid out, which Stacey is going to talk about.
So the first focus of the Biden administration for 2021 is to identify areas of priority and focus for investment and collaboration. At the forefront is to create more parks and safe outdoor opportunities in nature-deprived communities, setting aside 40% of federal investments to disadvantaged communities for Justice 40, which just came out in July. If you look at Justice 40, what's interesting about it is there's a heavy emphasis on climate as well as pollution, but not directly biodiversity, even though there is overlap. So that is an area in working with agencies that is an opportunity to be able to bring biodiversity more into this. The second focus is to support tribally led conservation priorities. The third is to expand collaborative conservation of fish and wildlife habitats and corridors. This may sound familiar to all of us in Chicago Wilderness as our cores and corridors connecting to people, right? So this is not only U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services conserve more at-risk species in the state wildlife action plans and migratory bird habitat, and to expand supported wildlife refuges and collaborate in state restoration initiatives, but also to look at establishing and expanding migration corridors with incentives, and very importantly, and you'll see this as a common thread, local collaboration. The second trilogy is to increase equitable, well-managed, sustainable access for outdoor recreation. Again, that a focus on people, connecting people to our resources, with an emphasis on voluntary programs for more access to public lands. Prioritizing management planning so that we make sure that the uses on these public and private lands support the natural resources. Incentivizing and rewarding voluntary conservation efforts of fishers, ranchers, farmers, forest owners. There is a huge push with the Biden administration on focusing on the people that will be providing the benefits rather than the conservation organizations that will be assisting in this process, to garner more support across the nation as a conservation ethic, which is really essential for this whole initiative to take place. Last, but certainly not least, is the creation of jobs by investing in restoration and resilience. The Civilian Climate Corps is used as a front and center example of this, with $10 billion currently allocated towards a program to bolster resilience with good paying jobs and widespread economic benefits in all areas across the United States. Also, our Natural Area Stewardship Act is another example of how that would apply. So the Biden administration, and this is an interesting crossover with what we're doing in Chicago Wilderness, is also very focused on metrics. And in the first year, what agencies, USDA, NOAA, USGS, and others are really focusing on is to collect a baseline, an aggregate to track information as to where we're at right now, both with collaboration as well as conservation. And that's a place where we can and should feed into this initiative. Once this baseline is created, this Conservation and Stewardship Atlas, the focus is going to be on updates on collaboration, how well we're doing at connecting to people, as well as an assessment of land cover change, including going backwards as well as going forwards on how we're doing with conservation of open space and connecting and restoring wildlife habitat conditions and populations. So for those of you who have seen this baseline before, it just changed thanks to David Holman. Thank you very much, David, if you're listening. The 30% is still 10.9 million acres in Illinois. This is Illinois centric. The next slide is going to be Chicago Wilderness, but this gives you an idea of what we need to do to reach 30 by 30 in Illinois. Right now we have 4.15, as David corrected me, percent of our state, about 1.5 million acres of public-private protected natural land in Illinois. To move from 4.15 to 5% would take 305,000 acres, 2 Shawnee National Forests and 1 Midewin. That's a lot. If you looked at conservation easements over the 305,000 acres, assuming 30% value, if you had land selling at $8,000 per acre at fair market value, which is where some of our farmland is kind of midline in the northeastern Illinois area, that would total out to 813 million in order to move from 4.1 to 5% with easements. If you look at the Land and Water Conservation Fund, fully funded is at 900 million per year to protect land in 50 states. So I'm saying this to give you an idea of the scale of resources that we really want to attract in order to have an impact on scale of 30 by 30. Local referendum. I know there has been discussion about the forest preserves of Cook County, which is wonderful. In addition to that, the collar counties could generate 175 million to protect 7,000 acres in 5 years. Looking backwards, referendum are really important in that from 1993 to 2017, the amount totaled 1.5 billion. So that is an integral piece in looking at financing. Also, 75% of land in Illinois is in agriculture. So regenerative agriculture is going to be a significant piece of the solution to 30 by 30. But certainly we also have to focus on our most biodiverse areas. Maintenance and green jobs are vital to keep what we protect. Tanisha.
Right now we are at, sorry, I was typing something in the chat. I just want to say, like, alluding back to that previous slide, that yeah, the Forest Preserves of Cook County referendum is a great example of local initiatives to generate funding for nature-based climate solutions, but we're really looking at tackling long-term permanent funding because we have a long way to go. And as Stacey said, we're not going to get all of the LCV money just for the state of Illinois, which would be amazing. But this is where Chicago is in our the Chicago Wilderness Region's baseline is. So we have about 8 million acres across the 4-state ecoregion, and that's all 4 states that Chicago Wilderness encompasses. And 7.2% of that area is publicly and privately protected. But again, we want to hit 30 by 2030 or however long it would take just Illinois to get there and be a leader for the other Midwestern states, which isn't currently considered as points of priority for the national campaign. 30% of this ecoregion would be 2,390,000 acres, but we need about 2 million more to be protected to achieve this goal. So as you can see, we have a very long way to go just to reach 30% of where Chicago Wilderness Base is.
So what's important to remember is that we're not moving in a straight line. And as the Chicago Wilderness region evolves, we need to maintain the gains that we are painstakingly doing to protect and to restore our landscapes. Of brief note, I don't know how many of you are familiar with North Point Intermodal and Piatone Airport, but if those two were built, that would be 10,000 acres, and it would erase the 10,000 acres that we are striving to protect within the Hackmatack course. So just as an idea of scale as to how much these huge developments of regional importance can detract from our goals, planning and defense is essential to maintain what we protect. So what does success look like? In having this discussion, what we've heard a lot is that it's going to be essential to move the masses and decision makers to care and act to hit and maintain our 30 by 30 target. And as Tanisha was saying, we need to leverage government resources at all levels to attract federal and private funds to scale up our capacity and impact. We need to better assist underserved communities achieve their needs and vision, building resiliency and equitable access to healthy lands and waters. It will be vital to expand conservation models with agencies, organizations, communities, and institutions to accelerate the speed and scale of conservation. And last, we need that baseline and attainable metrics to really understand what we can do and how quickly we can go, short and long term, based on supply and demand for conservation. So, as we've been looking at the Chicago metropolitan area as an example within our ecoregion, what we're really seeing as we're learning about Justice 40 and other federal vantage points is that we are a proof of concept of how critical it is to conserve and steward biodiversity where there are people. A lot of what we're seeing is a push still for lower populated areas that have old growth forests, which is wonderful. However, it is just as, if not more vital, to support biodiversity where the people are. And in fact, if we're looking at the trilogy by the UN of biodiversity loss, climate resiliency, and pollution reduction, we are at the sweet spot when you look at our major metropolitan areas of investments hitting that full trilogy and having thrice the impact as just devoting money to any given one. So we have an opportunity with Chicago Wilderness through the 30 by 30 Coalition and through other avenues to ensure that we are held out nationally as a model as to why major metropolitan areas are vital to invest in as part of 30 by 30.
And also not just why we're vital to invest in, it's also we have a large population of people in metropolitan areas, and that's a lot of land and people that need to be protected. If we think about the issues just right here in Chicago with pollution, land use, and zoning, it would be an extreme disservice and honestly another example of environmental racism to leave out metropolitan areas. But back to Illinois 30 by 30 Coalition, we have also adopted 4 additional goals along with the America the Beautiful goals, because we realized that Illinois, with it being rural, suburban, and urban areas, that we need to tailor this work a little bit more to what Illinois is capable of doing and what our state of conservation is at right now. I'm not going to read these out to you, but we have an equity goal. How do we create a community decision-making process for development? A local food goal, sustainable agriculture, and an explicit water goal, because we realized from our water experts that having it lumped in with land would mean that it would get a little bit buried. And we know that flooding and stormwater management are very key issues here. And we also have Lake Michigan. So these are the goals that the coalition has, and we want to bring Chicago Wilderness and a part of this and collaborate on these issues, because we are unsiloing conservation work, and we need as many heavy hitters such as the Alliance involved in this as possible.
So we've done a lot of work, and Tanisha, I don't know if you want to start with the work that we've done, and thank you, Laura, Riley, and others for connecting us to the working groups.
Yeah, so we have really been working hard and hitting the ground to get more of Chicago Wilderness involved. We have already done 3 other presentations. So we've talked to the Land Governance Group, we have presented to Farmland and the Steering Committee, and now we have the Climate Green Vision Group and also Aquatic Resources as well. So we have been talking to various spaces a part of Chicago Wilderness to get more members involved, figure out how we can share information and research, where we can collaborate with goals, and really start that public education and messaging piece. Because along with Illinois 30 by 30, we are doing community listening sessions across the state, and we know that the more partners we have, the larger of an audience we can attract.
Thanks, Tanisha. So with the land acquisition group, just as an example, what we were really talking about is what breaks down to be a supply and demand problem, right? And the focus was not only understanding our baseline and understanding what we view as our attainable goal, but really looking at that goal and flipping it around in our hands to determine what the underlying assumptions are, right? What are we assuming as far as our funding, short-term bursts as well as long-term funding for acquisition, stewardship, and infrastructure? What kind of capacity are we anticipating that we will have and that we need? And then what's our ability to move to protection and stewardship of land, right? Then looking at those challenges, looking at those current barriers, how do we start working around those to accelerate this pace and scale of conservation? And in addition to that, recognizing that we need people to relate to biodiversity loss and for there to be active community support in order to have people to be willing to protect and steward our lands and waters. So there's a demand side, and we're also looking at how much that is limiting right now our conservation and stewardship efforts so that we can change the supply and demand ratio to accelerate our goals in line with 30 by 30. So I just went through that, so I'm going to skip. And Tanisha?
Yeah, and right now we are here with our ACTS to collaborate on this initiative. We would love to have Chicago Wilderness be willing to not only serve as a resource, but a partner as the Illinois 30 by 30 Coalition goes along with this. And that's a plethora of ways, whether it's sharing what's going on with the Green Vision work, sharing some of the plans that have been done, helping us with messaging and education across the Chicago region. We really think that Chicago Wilderness could be a powerhouse in this and has a great seat right now with being a hub for 4 ecoregions, not only just in Illinois, but the 3 other states. So, and we also would like to invite individual organizations to be members of the 30 by 30 Coalition. So I think we only have 1 minute for Q&A, but if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them now or put them in the chat and Stacy and I can respond. All right.
Tanisha and Stacy, thank you so very much for a very informative presentation. All great. And I do know the Green Goal Vision is incorporating some of the 30 by 30 tenets into the work that's being done. So that's great. I am curious if in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Indiana, are there similar types of coalitions being built around 30 by 30?
Well, we know that there are similar coalitions in the West being built around 30 by 30, but like I said, with the American Beautiful campaign, it's not really focusing on the Midwest. So it's very possible that other states are trying to work on this work, but haven't gotten to a point of coalition building because there isn't much guidance from the federal government yet on how to tackle this. So Illinois is really trying to be an example of how to do this, and that's why we've created this coalition.
Yeah, I think that's what I've also seen is that right now the coasts have really they mobilize very quickly. Mm-hmm. And whereas like Wisconsin DNR has some great metrics, Jim, like, right, with if you look at the health and vulnerability index, they have great metrics to be able to supply to agencies. I think we're all still trying to grapple with what's coming down out of the federal agencies and how we connect with that, both on a community and conservation agency and organization level.
That's great. And I think definitely being a 4-state alliance here, that we bring in those other states outside of Illinois and working on that it's a natural fit here for the alliance. And hopefully as we strengthen partnership membership from the other states as well to grow that. So that's awesome. Okay, that moves us on, just general committee working group reports. Anybody, just go ahead, raise your hand, jump on in, unmute yourself, and we're happy to share anything that you'd like to with the rest of the group.
So I'll take a start since healthy landscapes was goal number 1, which we're moving away from, but I'll still claim that. We had a very good meeting on Monday. We've done a really good job of collecting information about what the natural resource and science team should be looking at, and actually had several scientists join us on Monday, which was really great. So we have 10 different work streams that we're talking about. And they include oak oak ecosystem recovery, the urban tree canopy, climate adaptation, prescribed burning, invasive species, volunteers, and I'm trying to think of the other ones off the top of my head. Data management is another one. And so on Monday, we did a very good effort of collecting information from the group at a previous meeting and turning them into tributaries underneath the work stream. We're going with the aquatic connection there. And so we ranked those tributaries, and that information is going to be out there shortly. I think we're working with Laura to think about how we can do an email blast with that information. So there is another line item at the bottom of that table, and that is what we would call champions to work on the different work streams and implementing the tributaries. And for the most part, I think we have 6 out of the 4 work streams identified with somebody. The urban tree canopy, we've working with Morton Arboretum and the other goal group of the Green Infrastructure Goal Group. The Oak Ecosystem Recovery Plan is with Chicago Regional Tree Initiative. The prescribed burn is either with our former burn task force or the Illinois Prescribed Fire Council. Wildlife is another one that we talked about, that we have the Wildlife Committee. Priority species, we want to reinvigorate the climate adaptation. We want to work with Ted and his group, but I think we've made some really good progress, and we'll be looking to share that information with everybody in the near future. Thank you.
I can go for the climate group, Elizabeth, if you want.
Thank you, Ted.
So we're sort of taking 2 tracks right now. We have our second full committee meeting on the 1st of November, and that's been saved the date and advertised. So one track is planning for that. The other track is still coordinating amongst the goal groups and trying to get all this information like Jim's that is rolling out to our team to figure out how we can plug in, recognizing that most of our metrics are going to be met through other groups' work, which is always tricky. So we're struggling with that internally as to how we deal with that. And we're taking in other groups and still meeting with other groups at a very thin upper level. And somewhere in between those 2 groups will collide and combine. So that's what we're working on. Any questions? You can email me. I'll put my email in the chat. And Stacy and Tonisha, thank you for your report, because I know I do need to still fit you in somewhere to what I just described. And I'm looking forward to doing so. And that's all I have. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Ted, we're grateful.
Anyone else like to go?
I can say on the aquatic resource group, we are still working with a myriad of people on metrics. This is blessedly complex, and we're trying to make it much more simple in really not only evaluating what metrics we're collecting, but what reasonably can be collected as a suite across the ecoregion. What we're finding is what the best metrics are is not necessarily realistic with funding capacity in our timetable to be able to roll out and maintain in an index. So we're looking at refining what we've got, and Matthew Santagata with Open Lands, who is our new planner, is really reaching out to everyone to pull that suite together. And we look forward to working with the hub group to share that out and see how we could get that online as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Stacy. Anyone else have a report either on Green Vision goals or other working groups that want to share with the group? Okay, thank you for that. For those that are sharing, and of course, great work that's being done by everyone. And you've heard through a lot of the reports today through all the committee work. So thank you on that. Laura, let me turn it over to you for a coordinator's report.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you to everyone who participated in today's meeting and brought together all this great information. I'm really grateful for that. I wanted to re-invite everyone to the December 8th Members Appreciation Event and Celebration of Excellence in Ecological Awards program and Force of Nature Awards. You will be seeing more emails coming out about that from us in the future. Also, we're gearing up to start our membership renewal process. You will see some emails coming out about that shortly, and we will be sending out information to make it very easy to do that. Our big focus this year, as always, but especially now, and given what we've heard from August Ball today, is that we really do want to grow our reach both within our organizations. We want to spread the awareness about Chicago Wilderness to our members, and particularly our younger staff and staff that is energetic and enthusiastic and wants to learn more about these great green vision goals that we have, and roll up their sleeves and join the work that we're doing. So part of this membership renewal will be also a push to get names and emails of additional staff members that we would like to add from our organizations. And we were so pleased to be able to welcome 4 new members today, and we would love to continue that. We will put some information out that you can actually help share with your community partners and other partners in your areas to invite them to join and be a part of Chicago Wilderness. Obviously recognizing that membership dues are very valuable to the work that we do, but they should never be considered a barrier to involvement, and that we have worked within the steering committee process to come up with scholarships and opportunities to welcome groups at whatever level that they're able to join and participate with us. But most importantly, and with all of the critical work that's going on in the region, we want to make sure that we have everyone at the table for these discussions. So thank you for that. Oh, I think you're muted.
I am here. Anybody have any questions for Laura? Any additional work? Otherwise, that moves us into announcements, and anyone with information to share from your partner organization.
I'd like to let everybody know that's in the Fox River watershed that Congresswoman Lauren Underwood moved into the WRDA Act, which is the water recommendations. I forget the language, but the Corps of Engineers is now doing a study of the Fox River watershed to look at flooding and all sorts of issues. And so if anybody's interested in that, I'm trying to get some information on who's taking the lead on that with the Corps of Engineers, and I'll share that with Laura. But it's a really good effort to look at some of the issues that are happening in the Fox River watershed, both water supply, water quality, flooding, recreational decline, access, all those things. And so I just wanted to let everybody know that process is out there and is likely to begin. And then secondly, I was informed by our Stormwater Management Commission that the Department of USDA Natural Resource Conservation Services has started a study looking at, and those people that are on the Agricultural Committee will be interested in this, looking at the Des Plaines River corridor from Lake Cook Road to the headwaters, looking at opportunities to implement BMPs on agricultural land. So that feasibility study, which is likely means that they'll be looking to roll out opportunities for farmers, is out there. And again, as I get more information on that, I would be glad to share that with anybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Any other announcements? Last call. All right, the only thing I do want to say as a reminder, there is a joint committee meeting of the steering committee and our goal leads on the 27th of October. And we'll be sending out a specific agenda, some things to be thinking about prior to that meeting so we can have a great coordinated session. And we will also be looking for someone from your partner organizations, anyone that's got graphic design. If you have any capacity within the organization that can help us, we will be working on an annual report, and we can write the copy, but it's also great for someone that has graphic abilities to be able to turn it into something amazing. So if anyone has and can lend a support in that way, that's an ask that would be terrific. Otherwise, thank you again for being here today with us. We know your schedules are busy, and great to see you all here. Have a wonderful October. And if I can have a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second,
Yeah.
Jim Anderson.
Daniel, thank you. And Jim, a second. All right, all those in favor, motion by saying aye.
Aye.
Those nay? No? Okay, we are adjourned. We'll see everyone again on January 19th for our next meeting. Thank you. Stay well.
Thank you.